Hello everyone, welcome back. It's Nat Walsh. Today we are going to play with some new alcohol ink stays in place. So these, well, I bought these for about $11.95. I bought a couple there. We're also going to play with, we'll talk about that in a minute. We're also going to play with the Gerber Daisy Darkroom Door set. And you can see here it's actually really big. And I've just got some watercolor cardstock. I don't know who owns this card, as in what company. I know I own the cardstock, but as in what company, I don't know, because I think I actually got it in a great big massive sheet from a local craft shop, and then I've just cut it all down. But it's quite smooth on one side, and you can see there it's quite creamy, which a lot of watercolor cardstock is quite creamy, but this one is. Now I have tried and tested all these out. This is the bronze. So you've got the re-inker bottle. You have to re-ink this relatively regular because you're working with alcohol ink, so it's going to dry pretty quick. And then you have the little scraper to spread it around, and you only really need to do in that center spot part. And you can see there mine has actually stretched out, so don't stress. Just showing the little, make sure you keep the little scraper there on the top of the lid. And you've got another plastic cover that can go onto the stamp when you're not using it. So we're going to stamp him down. I do stamp it a couple of times because we are working on watercolor cardstock, and we all know that sucker does not always like to stamp the first time around, obviously, because it's got a lot more texture in it. Even this smooth stuff, it's smooth, but it still has texture. That's much better. So I'm going to use some full stick Post-it notes, and we're going to cut this in half and use it to make a mask on either side of our flower, like the top and the side there. So there's one, we'll cut that back down, and then I'll stamp out the other one. Let's talk about these inks. So we did play, a friend and I did play with these. There's some really great points. There's some points that I thought, I expected that to be a bit different, but it still makes sense why it didn't happen. All the information is also over on my blog, which will tell you exactly my pluses and the not quite thrilled. This is their Couture Creation, has this stamp cleaner. Works a dream, I tell you, and it smells so much nicer. I don't particularly like the Stays On cleaner, okay, only because of the smell. Like, it works great, but only because of the smell. But this stuff works really well and smells quite nice. So we're going to stamp the other little one now. I don't have to re-ink it because I've just done it, so you will get a few impressions out of this before you need to re-ink this. Okay, just let you know there. Pardon me. Okay. Some pluses and minuses. I really love the colours. Let's go through the colours. So we've got my phone is going nuts. Let me just shut that up. There is quite a few. There is the rose gold. There is the bronze that I am using now. There is a copper. Now, in lightness, because I will show you very shortly all the different ones, you've got the matte jet black, antique gold, sterling silver, and you see it, $11.95, and rose gold. I think they were the ones that I've got. So you've also got the copper. You've got Arctic pearl white, and there they are stamped out. So you can see down the bottom, you've got the rose gold, copper, and the bronze are sort of like a step light, medium, and a little bit darker. The antique gold is really pretty, and the sterling silver. Now you put it in, I'm saying that 2 is in 2 more, but there's actually 3 because I forgot the Arctic snow white, Arctic pearlescent white, I think it's called. In the light, these shine beautifully. You can stamp them on Obviously, they go really great on Yupo, but this is watercolor cardstock. This is plain. That white piece of cardstock was just the just plain white cardstock. Nothing major, nothing big. We'll come back to that in a minute. We're using some Arteza watercolor. Now, obviously, you just use whatever you've got. These were here. There was a fair bit. I'm going to use Sunburst Yellow, Naples, I think it's going to be called, Yellow Ochre. And then in the centers, I'm going to use Burnt Umber and Sepia Brown. But I can go back to that. It's sort of a mixture, because what I'm actually going to do is some of it's those three yellows, the yellow ochre, the sunburnt orange, sunburnt yellow, and sunburst yellow, and Naples yellow that I'm mostly going to use in the flowers. Pretty much what I'm going to be doing here is laying the yellow down, moving it out. Here we go, moving it out with a wet paintbrush, sometimes adding a little bit more yellow in it, coming back through with the Naples yellow, which is quite sort of a dirty yellow, dare I say, and the yellow ochre, which is really quite dirty yellow. But what I'm going to do is, once it's dried a little bit, I will go in with the yellow ochre, and then when it's really dry, I will go through with a very, very light hand and a very thin brush and add more detail. So I actually add little flicks of the yellow ochre and just blending it out. I am going to cut this short because this literally took me hours to do. There's a lot of petals in that sucker. There's a lot. I think I do come back to show you some of the smaller little petals, and I know I definitely come back with the centers, which we're going to just do that all together. We're not going to fuss too much with that at all, and we're going to add our own little texture to it. So going back to these inks, of course they stamp on Yupo. This is me checking out how they go with the watercolor, because obviously it's an alcohol ink, so it should be good with watercolor, and it's also good with solvent inks. So one would assume, but I thought let's just crack it out. This is not that much water. Over on the blog there you'll see another card that here it is, all pretty much done. So this is where I'm going to have the burnt umber and the sepia brown. Over on the blog you'll see another card that I've done where I've done a much more messier watercolor. It's very grungy, and then I've used one color, or honestly it's the same color as the background, and given it that more definition, and I haven't fussed around with it anywhere near as much as I'm going to fuss with this. And in both times the ink did perfectly, did great. So it stamps well. If you need to have a more solid image, to see the shimmer on white cardstock. You can't really see it too much with the finer, I'm just trying to figure out my wording sort of thing. With the finer detailed stamps, you can't see it. You need to have a bolder print. Then you really see it. They aren't opaque, they're translucent. So hence, I am currently looking at a card I made when I stamped. I had an alcohol ink background, and I just stamped a Hero Arts daisy frame or dandelion frame, I think it was called, from Hero Arts over the background, and you can see it, but doesn't stand out. Whereas when I did it with the bolder image, you can see it as clear as day, even with the bronze color. So it needs that more solid image to bring it up. On black cardstock, they all come up as a silver. I honestly can't. Probably the silver and maybe the rose gold are probably the brightest, but honestly you can't really tell, because that might just be me, who knows, but you can't really see the color. They're all still shimmery and pretty, but you can't see the color, but that's okay. You can actually use it to make your own background on Yupo cardstock, sort of if you're thinking along the lines of alcohol inks, but of course they don't move like alcohol inks, like normal alcohol inks. So you've got to do a little bit more work, but it still came out pretty. It still moved with the blending solution. This was literally just me having a play with it and just seeing how I do it. Back to this card for a sec. So what I've done is I put the lighter color, and then I've actually got 3 colors because I do put some black in this, and I've put the darker color, so the burnt sepia, I think it's sepia brown, the darker of the two. I've put that down in very, very gentle dots. I've wetted very gently, like this is what I'm doing, that sort of thing, to move it. And then when it's dried, I've gone back through and added a few more, and then I added a few more black. We're on to the background now. My inks were really drying out. My water, it was really, really hot this day, and my watercolor was really drying out super, super quickly. So I'm just going to do this really, really roughly and try and take it out as far as I can. I probably should be wetting the cardstock down first, but honestly I didn't even think about it, except for the fact that it was stinking hot, and I'm like, I have to work like this hard. This shouldn't be this hard. And if I'd put the water down first, it would have been so much easier. And that's sort of the basics of the card. What I'm also going to do is put some black splatter down, because I like my splatter. Now, I would suggest you cut down your piece of cardstock before you worry about little tiny fiddly bits and pieces like I just did then, because I actually cut it all off. So it really doesn't matter. I managed to get black paint everywhere. So I've washed my hands, I'll come back to it, and we're going to flick some splatter on. Just fairly random. And we're going to let that dry. I've got some Tailored Expressions simple strips, and I've already pre-cut these out and everything else. So stamped it and pre-cut it out. So we're going to go through and figure out which one. I'm going to lay this up with my current favorite, with small sentiment strips, using up some scrap pieces of black cardstock and gluing those down and raising that up. And I'm quite liking that at the moment. So while I do that, that's all pretty good. What else can I tell you? So yeah, I do like them. And don't get me wrong, like I am a little bit disappointed that it didn't pop up a little bit as much on the black, but it is still super pretty. I haven't tried the pearlescent jet black, but it's pearly, it's sparkly, and why wouldn't it work? Because it's Couture Creations. So on the whole, I really, really like them. This video is not sponsored by them at all. They don't even know I'm doing this, but it was good fun to try and test these out. As I said, they're not as opaque as I expected it to be when stamping with with a solid background, but it was still good. I'm going to mount that up with some double foam tape, and it's double layered. So I've cut it off the ring, and I folded it over, and that's it. And here I'm just going to use up some little bits and pieces left over, because I've got a terrible habit of just having bits of foam floating around the place. That's my card. So it would be an honor if you subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, like this video, and click on the little bell, and that will get you notified of whenever I have a new video. Thanks for stopping by. Talk to you later. Bye.